People think a Jehovah's Witness marriage is the safest place a young woman can land. Quiet husband, scripture on the wall, a congregation watching. I want to tell you what happens to the wife inside that house when her body will not do the one thing the organization quietly requires. I am 26, born in the truth in Mansfield, Ohio. Married at 18 to a ministerial servant named Daniel Hoffman. Disfellowshipped in mid-December, 4 months out, living alone in Columbus now. What I am about to tell you is not my story. It is the story of a sister I watched, a sister in Mansfield North congregation who did everything the governing body told her to do, and was still quietly replaced by her husband because her body would not cooperate with the doctrine. They never said the word infertile from the stage. They did not have to. The mechanism of replacement inside the truth is so polite, so dressed in scripture, so slow, that by the time the new wife sits in the front row, nobody can quite remember when the first one stopped attending. I remember. Stay with me through this one. There is a young sister somewhere watching in secret, in a marriage she cannot question, in a body she has been told is failing her. If you subscribe, if you leave a sentence in the comments, you put your voice in the room with her. You tell her she is not the only one who saw what happened to the woman before her. Bear witness with me. Her name was Karen Beckett. She was 8 years older than me. The first time I really noticed her, I was 16, helping set up folding chairs for a midweek meeting, and she walked over and put her hand on the back of my neck the way an older sister does, and asked me how my mother was. Karen had been married for almost 6 years at that point to a brother named David Beckett, who was already a ministerial servant and was being whispered about for elder. They were what the older pioneer sisters in Mansfield North called an exemplary young couple. Karen had been a regular pioneer since she was 19. David ran a small contracting business in town. They lived in a clean little house off Lexington Avenue with a Proverbs 3 plaque over the couch and a literature cart tucked behind the front door. Everyone in the congregation pointed at them when they wanted to show you what marriage in the truth was supposed to look like. The married sisters used Karen's name in conversations with their own daughters the way some women use the names of saints. Be more like Sister Beckett. Pioneer like Sister Beckett. Submit like Sister Beckett. Wait on Jehovah like Sister Beckett. She carried that weight for years before anyone outside her marriage noticed how heavy it was getting. When I got engaged to Daniel at 17, Karen threw me a bridal shower. Just the sisters from the hall, in her living room, with a folding table set up under the window. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and Lipton tea and the slightly chemical sweetness of grocery store buttercream from a small white cake she had bought at Kroger that morning. I remember the women laughing at something my aunt said. I remember the cake plates were paper. I remember the afternoon light coming in low and gold across the carpet, and a hymn playing softly from a small portable speaker on top of her bookshelf. One of the Kingdom songs, I forget which. I remember Karen handing me a soft package wrapped in tissue with a hand-tied ribbon. Inside was a pink hardcover copy of The Secret of Family Happiness, brand new, the cover not yet creased. And tucked into the front of it, in her own slow, careful handwriting on a small white card, was the scripture from Psalm 127, verse 3. Sons are an inheritance from Jehovah. The fruit of the womb is a reward. She kissed me on the side of the head and said, "You are going to be such a good wife." And I believed her. I believed her so completely that I tucked the card back inside the book and I did not look at it again for almost 3 years. Because I did not need to. The promise it carried felt like a guarantee, the way everything in the truth felt like a guarantee when I was 17. I think about that afternoon a lot. I think about Karen kneeling next to the little folding table, smiling at the women she had grown up with, knowing she had already been trying for nearly 4 years by then, and nothing had happened. I think about the scripture she chose for the card. Of all the verses in the New World Translation she could have copied out for a teenage bride, she chose the one about the womb. I did not understand it then. I understand it now. That was a woman trying to bless me with the things she was being slowly destroyed for not having herself. She wrote the words in pencil first, and then went over them in pen, the way you do when you want to be sure you do not misspell them. I noticed that years later, when the card was already faded, when I found it again folded inside the book in the bottom of a moving box. The countdown begins the day a Jehovah's Witness wife signs the certificate. Nobody states it aloud. Nobody has to. From the very first meeting after the wedding, the older sisters start asking, gently, about plans. The circuit overseer's wife mentions, in passing, how many children her own daughters have. The Watchtower studies on family worship somehow keep falling on articles about raising spiritual children in Jehovah's organization. The unspoken clock is loud. It is louder than any one sermon. It is in the way a sister at the literature cart asks how you are feeling, and her eyes drop by reflex to your stomach. It is in the way the family worship outline assumes there will, one day soon, be small voices answering the questions you read aloud. It is in the way every spring assembly somewhere has a talk on raising children to love Jehovah, and you sit there with your own husband counting the months in your head. The clock had already been ticking on Karen Beckett for 4 years when she gave me that book. It started ticking on me the day I came back from my honeymoon. I want to step out of Karen for a minute and tell you what the doctrine actually says, because the doctrine is the engine of what happened to her, and without it, what David Beckett did 6 years later would look monstrous instead of obedient. The governing body teaches that marriage was instituted for a purpose. They quote Genesis, "Be fruitful and become many." They teach that the Christian wife's primary scriptural role is to be a help and a complement to her husband under the principle of headship, and that one of the central blessings of that union is children raised in the truth. The publications never come out and say a barren wife has failed Jehovah. They are far too careful for that. What they do instead is build, brick by brick, an entire architecture of articles and assembly talks and family worship outlines that treat witness children as the natural and expected fruit of any spiritual marriage. The Secret of Family Happiness, the book Karen gave me at the shower, has an entire chapter on what makes a Christian family complete. The illustrations are families, 3 children, 4 children, a baby in every other paragraph. There is no chapter for the woman whose body will not give her husband what the organization expects him to receive. And then there is the other doctrine, the one nobody talks about until the day it is being used against you. The teaching that a brother in good standing has the right to request what the elders call a scriptural separation if his wife is not fulfilling the purpose of the marriage. The doctrine is technically about infidelity. In practice, the door it opens is wider. I have watched, with my own eyes, 3 elders in a back room interpret the phrase purpose of marriage to mean things it was never written to mean. They did it with me, sitting at a rectangular table in November, when Brother Thompson asked me if I had always fulfilled my marital due. They did it with Karen Beckett years earlier, in the same back room, with the same clipboard, when David finally went to them. He never used the word infertile. He used the word purpose. And the elders nodded and reached for the Shepherd the Flock of God manual and began to build the case. Let me pause the explanation for a moment. Some of what was done to Karen, and to me, cannot be spoken aloud on a platform built for advertisers. I tried in the early months. I learned what gets a video buried. What I could not record, I wrote. 3 years of writing it down in private until it became a document. I called it the Mansfield Pages. 208 of them. 10 chapters, each one anchored to one object from the life I left. The link is in the first comment of this video, if you want to read what the camera could not say. Back to Karen. The first thing that happens when a sister in a witness congregation cannot conceive is that the older pioneer sisters start visiting her. They do not call it shepherding. The elders shepherd. The older sisters encourage. They show up on a Thursday afternoon with a casserole and a watchtower folded open to a particular article, and they sit at her kitchen table and they tell her, gently, that Hannah prayed and Jehovah remembered her, that Sarah laughed and Jehovah still gave her Isaac. They tell her that maybe she is not praying with enough faith, that maybe she should examine her own spirituality, that maybe she needs to be more submissive in the marriage so that Jehovah will see fit to bless the union. I watched Sister Doherty and Sister Vogel walk into Karen Beckett's house with casseroles on 3 separate occasions in one summer. I was 22 years old, doing field service in her territory, when I saw their cars in the driveway for the 3rd time. Karen had not been at the meeting that Sunday. I knew, even then, what those visits really were. I just did not have the words yet. The second thing that happens is that the circuit overseer's twice-a-year talks somehow keep landing on the same theme: the role of the Christian wife, the blessing of children, the danger of the materialistic mindset that postpones family for career or for selfish reasons. He never names anyone. He does not have to. Every wife in the hall who has been trying for years feels the words land on her skin like small wet stones. Karen used to sit 3 rows in front of me during those talks. I watched the back of her head not move for an entire 45-minute discourse. I watched her hand reach over and find David's hand on the chair between them, and I watched David's hand stay flat on his thigh. He did not turn it over. The third thing is that one day she is simply gone. Not announced, not disfellowshipped, not officially anything. Just stopped attending. Daniel told me, in passing, on a Tuesday evening at home, that Karen and David had been having some private difficulties and were taking time apart. He said Brother Thompson was helping them. He said the elders had granted David a scriptural separation. I did not ask on what grounds. I did not need to. I had spent 6 years watching the casseroles and the head not moving and the hand not turning over. 8 months later, David Beckett married a sister named Allison from a neighboring congregation. Allison was 19. She was already pregnant by the following memorial. The whole hall called her a blessing. The whole hall stopped saying Karen's name. Within a year, I could not have told you whether Karen Beckett was alive or dead. None of the sisters who used to bring her casseroles knew either. The organization had simply absorbed her absence the way a calm pond absorbs a stone. A woman wrote to me last month after a different video and asked me if it is ever simple, in the truth, to just stop being someone. I think about her question. I think about how cleanly Karen was removed from the social fabric of Mansfield North. No funeral, no card passed around, no casserole carried to her empty house. The same sisters who had visited her with watchtowers and Hannah and Sarah were now visiting Allison with onesies and prayers for a safe delivery. I went to one of those baby visits. I sat on Allison's couch with a paper plate of cake on my knee, and I smiled. That is the part of this I will not forgive myself for easily, no matter how many sessions of therapy I sit through. I live in Columbus now, a small 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor. I see a secular therapist twice a week, on Mondays and Thursdays, a quiet woman who lets the long silences sit without trying to fill them. I have been working at a bookstore cafe for almost 3 months. Megan, the worldly friend from the bakery in Mansfield, drives down to see me once a month, and we eat takeout on my floor because I still have not bought a dining table. I cut my hair past my shoulders for the first time in February. I bought a pair of small silver earrings the week after, and I wore them to work the next day, and nothing in the universe collapsed. My mother crosses the street if she sees me. My brother Michael has not spoken to me in 7 months. Lily and Caleb are growing up without me, and there is nothing I can do about that. And I kept the pink book. Both copies of it, actually. The one Karen gave me at the shower in 2017, the cover still soft from being carried in a bridal shower tote bag. And another one, identical, that I found in a cardboard box at a yard sale in Mansfield 2 years after Karen disappeared, with her handwriting in the margins of Chapter 5 and Psalm 127 written again on the inside cover in pencil. I do not know who put her house up for the yard sale. David, probably. He did not know what he was selling. Karen had underlined the sentence in Chapter 5 that reads, "The wife should respect her husband's headship even when she does not understand his decisions." She had underlined it 3 times. Beside it, in the margin, she had written one word in the same careful pencil. Trying. Just that. Trying. I have looked for her. I have done what I can, 4 months out, with no congregation directory and no contact with anyone who would still speak my name. I do not know where Karen Beckett is tonight. I hope she is somewhere with a kitchen she chose. I hope someone finally told her that the contract she signed at 18 was not God's, no matter whose signature was on the bottom of it. And I hope, if she is watching this, that she knows the shower cake at Allison's house tasted like nothing in my mouth, and that I have been carrying her quiet absence around with me ever since. If you grew up in a congregation where a woman could be erased between one watchtower study and the next, and nobody around you said her name afterward, I see you. If you have been told your worth is in your womb, in your obedience, in your usefulness to a man under the principle of headship, I see you. If you have ever sat in a folding chair with your husband's hand not turning over on his thigh, while a circuit overseer talked about the materialistic sister who postponed children, I see you. If you are the next Karen, sitting in a clean little house off some county road right now, with the casseroles starting to appear on your kitchen counter, and an older sister reaching, gently, for your hands at the kitchen table, please hear me say this. It is not your body that failed. It is not your faith that failed. It is the doctrine that decided your body was the contract. Your body is not a contract. Your body is yours. And there is a version of your life on the other side of that doctrine that you cannot picture yet, because nobody in that house has ever described it to you. I am describing it to you now. To whoever is still here, thank you. If you want to read what the small pink book and Karen's scripture card were really for, the full pages are inside the Mansfield pages. First comment of this video. And so, freedom hurts less than obedience. I promise you that.